Regardless of everything else going on in the world in 2008, it was undeniably a fantastic year to be a gamer. Sure, it was the year that Twilight premiered in cinemas, but it wasn't all bad. In fact, there were so many wonderful games gracing our PCs and consoles in 2008 that most of us didn't have to come within a 500 feet radius of a sparkly vampire all year. As is the case with all of our best of X year lists, we have some pretty stringent rules that we must abide by. In order to qualify for a spot on this list, a game must have received a minimum of 7 professional reviews and have been released in at least one territory in the year in question. We don't include ports or re-releases in these top 10s, as we'll cover those in the list pertaining to the original year of release, nor do we include expansion packs. Finally, we get all of our review scores from GameRankings and Metacritic, and where the two sites have differing opinions on how good a game is, we go with whichever score is highest. I'm Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are the 10 best games of 2008. Number 10, Rock Band 2, Wii, 92%. Most games released onto Nintendo systems tend not to review as well as the same games on Xbox or PlayStation. Clearly, Rock Band 2 was not most games though, as it did every bit as well on the Wii as it did on the PS3 and 360. The actual gameplay of Rock Band 2 was very similar to its predecessor. Players select their favourite plastic peripheral and either strummed, thwacked or sang along with one of dozens of different tracks. There were also tons of songs available to download, and for a small fee, players could even import the soundtrack from Rock Band into Rock Band 2. The DLC aspect was brand new for Wii players, as it had been missing in the original Rock Band, as was the ability for players to take the game online, and both were welcome additions for the console. To be blunt, Rock Band 2 wasn't exactly groundbreaking. It introduced a no-fail mode, which was great for less experienced players, added new songs, and had received a bit of a makeover on the interface front. But aside from that, it wasn't much different from its predecessor. With that said though, why wouldn't you want more of something that was so awesome? Number 9, Shin Megami Tensei, Persona 4, PS2, 92.28%. By 2008, many people probably thought that the PlayStation 2 was on its way out. After all, the PS3 had been around since late 2006, and so it was likely getting to the point you didn't need your PS2 anymore, right? Wrong. Because if you traded in your old console, you'd be missing out on Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4, the fantastic RPG from Atlus. Persona 4 follows the player character as they move from the big city into the countryside for a year. It's not all local gossip and farmers markets though, because murder is afoot. And it's up to the PC to solve the crimes by harnessing the power of their personas. To the uninitiated, personas are physical manifestations of the wielder's psyche. The more you know. Despite being released exclusively on the previous generation, Persona 4 received universal critical acclaim. Reviewers praised the developers for retaining everything that made the Persona series so popular, while still bringing in enough new elements to keep pushing the series, and the genre as a whole, forward. It may be well over a decade old now, but the game remains popular to this day, with ports of Persona 4 Golden coming to 8th and 9th generation consoles sometime in 2023. Number 8, Fallout 3, Xbox 360, 93%. In October 1998, Black Isle Studios and Interplay Productions released Fallout 2, a fantastic little isometric open-world RPG. Little did players know that it would be an entire decade, almost to the day, before they got a follow-up, and things would look very, very different. Released in October 2008, Fallout 3 was the first game in the Fallout series to be developed by Bethesda. It eschewed the isometric graphics in favour of 3D ones and replaced turn-based combat with VATS, which was basically a hybrid of timed turn-based and real-time combat. Fallout 3 is set in the year 2277, where players jump into the shoes of an inhabitant of Vault 101, an underground fallout shelter built by the government to protect those inside from the post-apocalyptic irradiated landscape. With their father missing, they're forced to venture out into the devastated world and find themselves continuing his work in his stead. Despite the changes that had been made to the series' formula, Fallout 3 received universal critical acclaim upon its release. Critics lauded VATS, the huge open world which was full of interesting characters, and the sound design, which really helped to hammer home the bleakness of the situation. In a good way, of course. Number 7, Braid, Xbox 360, 93%. There are few things that surprise us here at Team Triple Jump. Thanks to the Cultaholic lads, we very often come into the office to find an octopus in the sink, or gallons of baked beans in a paddling pool, so really, there's little that can shock us. With that said, we were quite surprised by Braid, the puzzle platformer from game designer Jonathan Blow. Not only were we Jonathan blown away by the quality of the title, but also by its twist ending, which we won't spoil for you, but by golly, did it catch us off guard. Braid follows protagonist Tim as he sets out on a journey to save a princess from a monster. Throughout the game, not much detail is given about who Tim is, the nature of his relationship with the princess, or what the monster is. All we know is that Tim made some sort of mistake, though we don't know what, and he seeks to make amends. Following its release, Braid quickly became the best rated game on the Xbox 360 arcade, and for good reason. Both critics and players enjoyed Braid's puzzles, which were intricately designed and satisfying to solve, its eye-catching visuals, pleasant soundtrack, and of course, its narrative. If you know, you know. Number 6, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Wii, 93%. Sometimes you need a game with a rich narrative, expansive open world, and dangerous quests that will leave you feeling like an absolute legend. Other times, you just need a game that lets you beat the plops out of Pikachu. And that's exactly what players got from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. The premise of Super Smash Bros. Brawl was fairly straightforward. Players and their chums could pick from one of many fan-favourite Nintendo characters before choosing a stage and proceeding to beat the living daylights out of one another using well-timed combos, or poorly timed button mashing in the case of our writer. Did Super Smash Bros. Tell a moving story? No. But did it inspire greatness in its players by having them overcome unfathomable obstacles? Well, also no, not really, but none of that mattered because it was bright, colourful and tons of fun. The controls were nice and simple, so pretty much everyone could pick it up and play it, but it was still challenging enough to keep even the most experienced fighter fans engaged. Plus, it came with more content than you could shake a stick at, making the game endlessly replayable. Put simply, if you had some friends over, there were few better ways to pass a couple of hours. Number 5, Gears of War 2, Xbox 360, 93.32%. This isn't the first time we've seen a Gears of War title on one of these lists, with the first game appearing in the best of 06, and based on the series' critical trajectory, it seems likely that it won't be the last time either. For the sequel, players once again join the COG as they continue their fight against a genocidal locust. Unlike the previous game, however, the story was written by comic book writer Joshua Ortega, who is known for his work on properties like Star Wars, Spider-Man, and Batman. Because of this, Gears of War 2's plot ended up getting far more love from critics than that of the original. The game was also praised for its overall polish and new Horde mode, which allowed players to get together in groups of up to 5 and fight waves of increasingly strong locust. The game did garner some criticism for its multiplayer, which some found to be buggier and laggier than its predecessor, its voice acting and its final act. But although these things did subtract points from Gears of War 2's review scores, they weren't enough to prevent the game from being absolutely fantastic overall. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, PS3, 94%. It's getting to the point where we might as well reserve a spot on these lists for a title from the man, the myth, the legend, Hideo Kojima. He's already appeared not once, not twice, but 3 times, and not to spoil any future lists, but it's safe to say we haven't seen the last of his work either. The 4th entry in the Metal Gear Solid franchise takes place just 5 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 2. Players rejoin Solid Snake, now known as Old Snake, thanks to some pretty gnarly premature aging, as he embarks on one final mission to assassinate his nemesis, Liquid Snake. The latter now inhabits the body of one of his former henchmen, goes by the name of Liquid Ocelot, and is trying his gosh darndest to take control of the Sons of the Patriots. Metal Gear Solid 4 went down with critics like an ice cream on a warm day, with many publications, such as Famitsu, GameSpot, Game Informer, and IGN US, giving it perfect scores. In particular, critics were impressed by the game's technical achievements, its audio-visual presentation, and how it rounded off the Metal Gear Solid saga. Number 3, World of Goo, Wii, 94.04%. Admittedly, World of Goo sounds like the description of Adam's latest Hell in a Smell effort. But trust us when we say that it has nothing to do with dumping heck knows what on a defeated wrestling fan, and was, in fact, a pretty good game for the Nintendo Wii. World of Goo was a physics-based puzzler that tasked players with using small balls of goo to create bridge-like structures that could span various chasms and obstacles in order to allow other little balls of goo to go on their merry way. The aim was to use as few balls of goo as possible so that more goo balls could reach their intended destination. Are you sick of the word goo yet? I know I am. Critics were floored by World of Goo, praising everything from its audio-visual presentation to its gameplay. It was a simple concept, that was for sure, but it was executed flawlessly, giving the likes of Portal a run for their money. Not only was World of Goo a fantastic physics puzzler, but it also ended up being the 4th best Wii game of all time, making it better, from a critical standpoint at least, than Xenoblade Chronicles, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and even the Metroid Prime trilogy. Not bad for a few balls of goo, eh? Number 2, Little Big Planet. PS3, 95%. Are you a fan of creative platformers voiced by national treasure Stephen Fry? If so, then that's really quite niche and you should consider expanding your horizons a bit. But it's safe to say that you would love Little Big Planet. The main focus of the PlayStation 3 exclusive was creativity, and players were able to flex their development chops by building levels and sharing them online. The game also came with a story mode that saw protagonist Sackboy embarking on an adventure across a number of differently themed locations, such as the islands, the metropolis, and the savannah. Little Big Planet was unlike anything the games industry had previously seen, and thanks to its near-flawless execution, it garnered universal acclaim. Critics particularly enjoyed the level editor, which was straightforward enough to allow newbies to get in on the fun, but deep enough to let more dedicated players go absolutely hog wild with their designs. In addition, the online community was easy to navigate, which meant that players had an easy time finding the creations of others to play through. The developer-designed levels in the story mode were also highly praised, and although the plot itself was quite brief, overall the pre-made levels were still highly entertaining. And number 1, Grand Theft Auto 4, PS3, 98%. Sequels, by and large, tend to get progressively worse the longer a series goes on, unless, of course, they're developed by Rockstar, in which case the rule does not apply. Set in the fictional Liberty City, Grand Theft Auto 4 tells the story of Niko Bellic, an Eastern European immigrant who travels to the United States in order to escape his criminal past. Though no prizes for guessing that he soon finds new nefarious endeavours to sink his teeth into. The response from critics was phenomenal, and GTA 4 was lauded by pretty much everyone that came into contact with it. Its huge open world caught most of the praise, and both critics and players were floored by the sheer amount of stuff there was to do. There was also love for the characters, graphics, sound design, and narrative, all of which came together into a near-perfect package. Not only was Grand Theft Auto 4 the best game of 2008, but it was also the best reviewed PlayStation 3 title of all time. And honestly, if Cousin Roman hadn't been phoning us every 5 seconds asking to go bowling, we'd reckon it would have been a perfect 100. No, Roman, I don't want to go to a strip club. Free breakfast buffet, you say? Well, it would be rude to turn down unlimited pancakes.